dig into this one today, I want to shout out my channel members. Josh, Cameron, Blunt, Too Heavy, Isaiah Robeson, Tristan Hoffman, Jaegerbomb Legend, Noble Bulls, James Isn't Real, Andrew Peacock, Andreas Anderson, and Micah Carter. Thank you to all of you for being channel members and supporting this channel. Also, I know my fiance put up the video the other day kind of talking about what had happened with me, but I want to shed a little bit of extra insight that she didn't really touch on. That first doctor's visit that I went to, we were doing the tests there with that guy, and the way he was talking, which is crazy now, like thinking of the outcome, but the way he was talking was basically like I was on death's doorstep. It was really wild. My blood oxygen content was like in the 80s, which I know isn't great, but I had like high temperature, high heart rate, all this stuff, and he was basically like, you need to go to the ER, I can give you antibiotics and send you home, but you might not wake up tomorrow. Like, that was kind of the vibe he was giving off. And then when we go to the emergency room and talk to the other doctor, he was basically like, Wyatt, I don't know what that guy was talking about, like, you have very mild symptoms, and the other guy was basically saying, like, my lungs were 100% fluid, so, I don't know, just crazy stuff. I'm still dealing with a bit of a lingering cough, that I'm on antibiotics for, but, my fever and stuff like that's completely gone, which is nice. So let's talk about the NBA Finals, shall we? First and foremost, congratulations to the Boston Celtics. And what's really cool for me in this series, is that Jaylen Brown is your finals MVP, after the flack he got, in last year's playoffs, and, just sort of the treatment over the years I've seen, Boston fans give him. And for the longest time now, he's been seen as the clear number 2 behind Tatum. But he, over the course of the series, outperformed Jason Tatum, I think pretty much every game. 16-31. That game 4 that they lost, oh no. Even then, boy, I guess Tatum outperformed him in the final game of this series, but beyond that, Brown was the better player, but I have to say also, to Tatum's credit, he was allowing himself to be, I don't want to say the number 2 guy, but he was allowing himself to, you could tell Brown was, the hot hand, and he was willing to give up extra touches and things like that. That is except for, I think, that game they lost. That game 4, I think Tatum was chucking that game. No, not really, 4-10 field goal. What? There was that one game where he was chucking. Which one was that? That was game 3 said, it's cool for me. Because of the two guys, Tatum and Brown, like kind of the two star players in Boston, I've always preferred Jaylen Brown's game, and he was getting absolutely slammed last year, so it's cool to see him pick up that Finals MVP. You know, it might be the only championship ring of this duo's Boston career, right? Nothing is guaranteed in this league, so I think that's pretty cool. But one thing that's interesting to me is that this Boston team really showcases the importance of depth in these playoffs. Looking at the playoff leaders for points, Luka's there at 7th, but you don't have any Boston player until 15th with Tatum, then Brown is 17. And you keep going, Derek White's at 31, Drew Holiday's at 41. And that's one thing watching the Celtics team, is it felt like it didn't really matter who had the ball, who was shooting. You could trust that they could score effectively. Whereas with Dallas, you did not really have that sense at all. Especially like those Tim Hardaway Jr. minutes for Dallas are absolutely killer, and I don't even know why Kid was giving him those minutes in the first place. Like, looking at, like, Exum had been really good in the playoffs up to this point. I'm gonna transition probably now to talk about the Mavericks a little bit more, just because I always find talking about the losers a little bit more interesting, because you think about improvements and things like that, right? But like the way that Kyrie, I don't want to say he's sold, but I mean, he was just completely rattled by the Boston crowd pretty much every game. And he was just trying to do too much. And he didn't look like the Kyrie Irving that we had seen in the previous few series, right? But, you know, looking at at Dallas, they're an interesting spot because the current iteration of the team has kind of really only been together since March. They had relatively little time to gel, right? And then you think they have another year of Lively. I think they need to, like, do whatever they can to get Andrew Wiggins. I don't know how likely that is, but maybe a guy like Trey Murphy or Quentin Grimes or something like that. But Tim Hardaway Jr. is on expiring next year. They need to get rid of him. He was absolutely unplayable. But I talked about the uncertainty of getting back here. I still think Luka's one of, if not the best players in the league. I think he was the best player in this final series for either team, except for Game 1 Porzingis. Game 1 Porzingis was an anomaly, but he ended up getting an ankle injury. Didn't play a couple games. But Kyrie, he really fell short in these playoff series. I think he only has maybe 1 or 2 good years left. Kleber, it's hard to tell exactly what you've got with him because he was injured in this series, and it was obvious that he was injured. And when Kleber's healthy and when he's like tuned in, he has a very unique skill set that makes him a very dangerous player. But the problem is he's never healthy. And I feel like he's a guy who gets in his head very easily. If he has a bad stretch in a game, just throw the whole game out. He's not going to be good. But if you look at the The Nuggets obviously are going to be back in the conversation. The Oklahoma City Thunder should theoretically be better, right? There's a lot of these teams that either the Mavericks beat this year or just, they fell short this year. And that might not be the case next season. They might be a team that is a little bit more dangerous. So I think Dallas actually is they really aren't guaranteed to be back here next year. Now, they have Luka, they have Kyrie, but I like Lively getting another year of development on him. But I think this offseason is going to be very important for them. Nico Harrison with complete control. I think he's a really good executive, but this is going to be a very important, into the fire type moment for him. Now, he just got an up close and personal lesson, like in this team building style that Boston did. Or if you look at Boston, they, like I said, they have so much depth. Drew Holiday has a really bad game. Doesn't really matter. Somebody else can pick up his slack. Jason Tatum is struggling. That's okay. Jaylen Brown will fill in for him. It doesn't matter if a guy has a bad game. Next man up, and they have the personnel to do that. Even Peyton Pritchard had a few decent minutes there in the playoffs, which, as an Oregon guy, it's cool to see that. So you have to think, okay, how can you try to replicate that in Dallas? And the problem is they don't have a ton of assets that are enticing. I don't know what an expiring Tim Hardaway Jr. is worth. And I feel like they have a lot of potential spots to upgrade. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens with them. People are calling this the start of a Boston dynasty. People are saying they could three-peat. It's really hard to three-peat in the modern NBA. But looking ahead to next season, I think they should still be the best team in the East. Depends on what the Bucks do. You guys know how I feel about the Bucks. The Sixers have a lot of cap space right now. And that's kind of their big thing, is who they're going to bring in. But I feel like it's just going to be Paul George. And personally, Embiid, Paul George, and Maxey doesn't really excite me whatsoever. I think that's a second round exit. So looking at these, I think that Boston could very easily be right back here. I think they probably will be the best squad in the East next season. I'm trying to think. Maybe the Knicks do something, get a little bit better. Because I think the Boston's going to branch out the same team next year. Maybe Horford will be gone. I don't know what their contract situation's looking like. But yeah. Also, speaking as a Blazers fan, you're welcome for the Drew Holiday trade at the time. Go back and watch that Damian Lillard trade video at the time. I said that I thought us trading Drew Holiday to Boston would be a major deciding factor in the Eastern Conference and then the playoffs. And besides that one really bad game he had, I think that was even game 4, the game they lost, or game 3, I'm not sure. We had one really bad game, but beyond that, Drew Holiday was really important for this team all year long, and especially in this series. But the thing is, I don't really have too much to say about the series overall, because from game 1, you were just kind of looking oh man, okay, they just clearly looked like the better team. They there's a couple moments like their head scratchers for Dallas. Like Dallas had that 22-point run, and then Jason Kidd called a timeout, even though they were the team on the run. And then like they didn't score a bucket for another like 3 or 4 minutes after that. Like they just lost all their momentum, like little things like that. But ultimately, those weird coaching things aside, the random like super fluky, really bad game 4 for Boston, I just don't really have too much to say. They just consistently came out and played better basketball. Honestly, it was kind of a boring finals overall because of how uneventful it was. You really didn't have these big dramatic moments. You were never like, ooh, who's gonna take it down. After game 1, my interest just kind of, I was like, I watched game 1, and then by about the third quarter, I don't think I finished game 1, and then I kind of just watched bits and pieces the rest of the way. Because I was like, alright, well, this isn't really very interesting, is it? Like, it's very one-sided. The same thing with the Stanley Cup playoffs. I watched the first 2 games. I was like, okay, well, I think I kind of have enough to discuss here at this point. I haven't watched any of it since, because it's just, when it's one-sided like this, it's not very interesting to watch or talk about. The most interesting and upsetting information to come out of this year's NBA Finals is that Charles Barkley will be retiring at the end of next season, which is really upsetting as somebody who's a fan of Inside the NBA. I know there was like some concerns about how that was going to continue because the DND not renewing the NBA and stuff like that. Just please don't bring in Draymond as a permanent member. Like, that's all I ask, but that's pretty upsetting as a fan of that. But yeah, so congratulations to Boston Celtics. I think Dallas has a lot of work to do if they want to get back here next season. I think it's going to be an even harder road for them next year. I think that the West will be tougher next season. Yeah, sorry it's a little bit short. Like I said, I still have a ton to say. Plus, still on the mend a little bit. Thank you so much for watching. I do hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please give a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more content just like this almost every single day. Until next time, guys. Bye-bye.